Hello, everybody, and welcome to the United Stand. You've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, and you will have seen all the news coming out last night and this morning. And we've got more updates on Cristiano Ronaldo and his interview with Piers Morgan. A very, very controversial interview. I think everyone's got a lot of different opinions on this. I think we know what the general consensus is about what different people are feeling. I said on the Twitter space last night, I don't know if any of you joined, some of my opinions on that, and I think my opinions have actually slowly started to change overnight as well. And the more stuff that comes out, the more that I see coming out, the more quotes that are coming out, I'm starting to change my opinion slightly, but the basics of it are still there. And we'll get into all the comments that are coming out. Piers Morgan on TalkSport this morning, I actually tuned in and listened to that as a bit of research for this show. And the stuff that Piers was saying, I think it's even more insightful into what this interview is going to entail and what is going to be said. And what you've got to realise is nobody has seen the full 90-minute interview, and we won't see that until Wednesday night. I think, the first part of it comes out Wednesday night at 8 p.m. and then Thursday night at 8 p.m. on Talk TV. So context is a beautiful thing, and we'll see the full context of that on Wednesday and Thursday. But we have got quotes coming out from Piers Morgan, and we've got quotes coming out from that interview. And I think we should just take them as we see them for now, realise there probably will be more context behind it. But for now, we've only got to judge what is already coming out. And what has been said is very, very, very interesting. And also, it is damning really for Manchester United. It is damning. And for Erik ten Hag, the manager, who has been completely disrespected by one of his players that he manages, it is really kind of a torrid time for Manchester United for this interview to come out. And I'll start with, before we get into the quotes, my opinion that is the quotes on the Glazers and the fact there's been lack of investment, as we'll go through in a minute. If nobody's seen, and I think everyone will have seen by now, Ronaldo said that nothing's changed in a number of years since he was first at the club. He said the jacuzzi is still the same, the technical stuff is still the same, nothing has improved, nothing has changed. And he calls out the Glazers in not making a big enough investment into the club, not caring enough about the football inside. That stuff coming out is brilliant for Manchester United fans, to be honest with you, because it completely calls the Glazers out and does what we know is happening. And a name big enough as Ronaldo to come out and do that is massive. But calling out Erik ten Hag, saying you feel disrespected by him and saying you don't respect him, calling out Wayne Rooney, a legend of Manchester United, about him criticising you, which is no one allowed to criticise anybody, and kind of making a little bit of dig about the fact his career's over and he's still playing. Don't like that. I think that leaves a sour taste. And also going in on Rangnick, I think there was a different way to do that. I think there was a different way to say that Rangnick wasn't the right coach without making it so disrespectful in the fact of basically saying he's not even a manager when he is. So I think that kind of stuff was just completely wrong from Cristiano Ronaldo, but we'll get into it. There's some stuff that was good that came through in the interview. I'm not going to lie. The Glazer stuff was good, but there's some stuff that is just completely disrespectful and just should never have happened. KB says, Beth, I don't blame Ronaldo for saying what he said. Someone had to say it and he didn't care that he was the one to do it. I'm glad he said it because it shows how poorly the club is run. I stand with CR7. The stuff about the club being run poorly, I agree with that stuff. I'll struggle to find someone that doesn't agree with that stuff, but that message is kind of left a little bit weak because of all the stuff he said about Erik ten Hag and the stuff that he said about the timing of it, of when Garnacho just scored that goal, and in him kind of putting Erik ten Hag under the bus and kind of saying that if he would have started, we'll get into this with the Piers Morgan quote, saying if he would have started from the start of the season, things would be different. Stuff like that. It kind of comes back to me, rather than just about the most important message that the Glazers are toxic towards this club. And at least that was said, but it could have been said in a much better way. Anyway, let's get in with the quotes, then we'll move on to the Piers Morgan stuff and get into it bit by bit. But there's a lot coming out and a lot of different things that weren't said last night as well. So make sure you stay tuned. The Piers Morgan stuff is very, very interesting, to say the least. So starting off from the quote from James at Ducker from the Telegraph, no comment from MUFC tonight on Ronaldo's accusations and claims. Sources indicating United won't allow the interview to take anything away from their end win at Fulham and the togetherness and spirit that was shown. So Manchester United don't want to comment on this. They want the spirit and the togetherness from Fulham to reign true and for that to be the headline. That isn't going to be the headline. We wish it could be the headline, but it's not going to be. When Ronaldo does an interview like this, I think Manchester United have to come out and make a comment on it. They can't just sit there and say nothing. They are, I'm not going to lie, the Glazers and the board at Man United, well, they'll be in meetings right now, completely mind blown about what has been said and wondering how to kind of combat this. Because when a figure such as Cristiano Ronaldo comes out and says that about the board and says that about the club and the way it's run and that things haven't changed for over 20 years, that is massive. He's also said that Juventus and Real Madrid are run completely differently. They have a winning mentality and that's why they win off the pitch. And it basically bigged up Juventus and Real Madrid's kind of the way that they run the club and completely slated Manchester United. So that Manchester United right now are going to be kind of shell-shocked. They're also going to want to stick by Erik ten Hag, their manager, which rightly so. That's the one thing I can say that they've done perfectly well throughout this. That's one thing I can say Manchester United have done well. The fact they've stuck by Erik ten Hag through everything and they've backed him the whole way, that needs to continue. It needs to also continue in the transfer market. So they'll be having discussions with Erik ten Hag right now and discussions with the board members on what's going to happen. But so far, there is no statement, and I think they're probably shell-shocked the way that we are. And I wonder what they will come back and say, because it's going to be very telling what they come back and say, and we'll have to wait for that to come out, because I think there will be a statement on that. Tom Grant says, "Morning, Beth. Any comment from United on this? Do you think they were react on this, or do you think they will hide from the press conference in the media?" Honestly, I think they have to comment. I think not commenting would be ignorant to what's going on. He's come out and slated the board, owners, manager. They have to comment on this. They can't just leave it. Someone as big as Cristiano Ronaldo, the amount of questions Erik ten Hag is going to get in future about this if it isn't shut down immediately and something isn't said, though he's going to get questions anyway, but I think they need to comment. I think the comment will probably be very PR, and that's what you would expect from the club. I don't think you'll really see anything telling in that comment. But what will happen with Cristiano Ronaldo's future is going to be the most telling thing, whether they decide to terminate the contracts. Doubt that'll happen. I think it should happen, but I doubt it'll happen. Whether they decide to keep until winter and how this affects the squad, how this affects the energy in the dressing room, how this affects the energy around Manchester United, how it affects Erik ten Hag, having Ronaldo in the background who he's said himself doesn't respect him. These are big decisions that need to be taken, and we'll get into what decisions need to be taken towards the later end of the show, because we'll have a bit of discussion on that. But Ty Marshall from the MEN says, Ronaldo's camp leaked stories that he wanted to leave the club 2 days before he returned to pre-season training under Erik ten Hag. He spent the summer trying to find a new club, and he's the one who feels betrayed. The timing of this should infuriate MUFC and his teammates. If I was a Manchester United player right now, I would be disappointed in the timing of this interview and the way that things have been said and the way he's thrown the manager under the bus, especially when the majority of that team, I would say, we can't say everyone because we don't know for a fact, but you can definitely know the majority of that team are behind Erik ten Hag, and Erik ten Hag is getting the best out of a lot of them players right now, and he's improved a lot of them players, and they've just won against Fulham. I think no matter what the outcome was last night against Fulham, the timing was always going to be horrible. If it was a United loss, he's making it about himself. If it was a Garnacho winning in the final minute, which it was, he's making it about himself. If it was a draw, Manchester United have dropped points, he's making it about himself. It's always going to be that. And I don't think there was any right time for this interview. I don't think it should have happened, if I'm being honest with you. I think an interview about how poor the Glazers have run this club when he leaves the club, and for him to come out and say that, or even an interview now about how poor the Glazers run this club, would have gone down well. But bringing Erik ten Hag into it, the manager and other people that he didn't need to come for, is where this has gone very, very wrong and very, very toxic. And I think that's where he makes the wrong decision when he came for Erik ten Hag. But I mean, that's what he's decided to do. And obviously, Ty Marshall says he wanted to leave the club, and 2 days before he was putting stories out about how he wanted to push for a move. Ronaldo, in this interview, from what we know at the moment, says that he didn't feel the empathy from Erik ten Hag or the board about his daughter, which is very, very sad, because she was in hospital and he had to spend time with her, and that's why he wasn't on pre-season. And I think, for me personally, to think that anyone wouldn't have empathy around that is very hard for me to grasp. And this is where you've got to realise that not everybody's the same. People are very, very different. So me personally, I can't understand why someone wouldn't have empathy in that situation, because I think obviously it's an awful thing that happened, and anybody would want to be with their child around that time. So to think that people didn't have empathy is really, really upsetting. But on the other side of it, the fact that he was trying to push for a move, and the fact he was leaking stories about him wanting to push for a move before he even met Erik ten Hag or came to training, that might have been what rubbed Erik ten Hag up the wrong way. The fact he was already trying to push for a move before even coming into the training. So maybe Erik ten Hag didn't want somebody as part of the squad who wanted to leave. He wanted someone fully committed to the project, which you can understand that as a new manager coming in, you want people that are fully committed to your project and that are going to play for you. But also at the same time, sometimes with managers, they just don't like certain types of players and they want someone different. Erik ten Hag didn't sign Cristiano Ronaldo, and Erik ten Hag might not wanted a player like him in the squad for whatever reason, whether it be the ego problem, whether it be the fact that he dominates the dressing room, whether it's the fact that he doesn't like the way he plays. So Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't signed by Erik ten Hag. So realistically, Erik ten Hag has every right to say, you're not part of my plans. I'm going to use you, but you're not going to be the forefront of my plans. And Cristiano Ronaldo either accepts that or they try and look for a move, which what should have happened? He should have been sold in summer. Let's get that clear. It would have been best for everyone for him to be sold in summer. But this is where you come back to the board again. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't want to be there. Erik ten Hag didn't want Cristiano Ronaldo. He wanted, you can tell, Erik ten Hag didn't want Cristiano Ronaldo. You can see that now. Erik ten Hag was open for him to leave. The board should have sold him. Again, it came down to money, and it came down to the fact they wanted a fee for him. They didn't want to let him go with how much they paid and the wages he was on. Realistically, they should have just got rid of the wages and let him go on a free. That's what should have happened. It didn't happen. It became toxic. Erik ten Hag had one opinion, Ronaldo had another, and it just completely clashed and got worse and worse. And I can say, honestly, I stick by the manager. No player, as much as I like Cristiano Ronaldo and as much as I think what he's done over his career is fantastic, I stick by the manager. And for me, the manager comes above any player that's been or has been. And even as Sir Alex Ferguson said at the club, the manager of Manchester United always should look at the club, and if any player thinks they're bigger than the club, that's time for them to leave. And Ronaldo, he's done great stuff for us in the past. He has been a brilliant player, but to come out and say stuff like this, it just screams that he thinks he's bigger than Erik ten Hag, which in his head he'll think he is, and in the footballing world he is. But as a manager of Manchester United, Erik ten Hag is the manager, and I think we should all get behind him. If I'm being honest with you, it should be club over player. Kyan actually says Ronaldo said what millions or anyone popular against the Glazers couldn't. Hopefully this fixes United, especially if it hasn't changed since CR7 left. Yeah, the stuff about the Glazers I'm completely on board with. Don't get me wrong. You can be against the stuff with Erik ten Hag, but also be for the stuff that he said about the Glazers. I think it's really important that that was said, and I'm happy he did speak on that. And I think a lot of the club will be happy about that. Not of the club, a lot of the fans. And then we move on to another quote from Sky, and it's coming from Cavi, saying MUFC are now likely to consider all their options regarding Ronaldo. The management and players don't understand why he said what he has said. They are hugely disappointed and that he will disrespect the club, his manager and teammates in this way. He also goes on to say Erik ten Hag and MUFC players are extremely disappointed with the manner and timing of Cristiano Ronaldo's interview. The club only found out about the interview as they were preparing to fly back from London this evening after the Fulham game. And Ronaldo was told on Thursday that he would not be in the starting 11 against Fulham, and that he would have been in the squad. And Cristiano told the club he was ill. I mean, I think we all know Cristiano wasn't ill. Ronaldo knows exactly when this interview was dropping. He wasn't ill. He wasn't ill. And to be honest with you, the things that are confusing to me is Erik ten Hag is, for me personally, I think he's done what he feels right in the handling of Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo will have an ego and he will think he should play every minute of every game. The fact of the matter is he's 38 years old, and I'm not trying to be ageist here, but he's 38 years old. He's not 28. He has had plenty of time this season to prove himself on the pitch. And I'm not saying Cristiano Ronaldo has to prove himself as a player, because everyone knows what he's done in football. I'm saying to prove he should be part of Erik ten Hag's starting 11 at this moment in time. He's not played well enough to warrant a starting place when Martial's fit, in my opinion. And Erik ten Hag handled him storming off at Spurs, I think, perfectly. The way that they suspended him for one game but then brought him straight back into the squad and didn't make a huge issue out of it, I thought Ronaldo kind of got off lightly in that sense. And then he made him captain, which he should not have done in hindsight. He should not have done. And then for Ronaldo to come out after the Fulham game when nobody had any idea during the season and speak ill of the manager is completely disrespectful. And it's disrespectful, I think, to the players as well that are kind of working on this project, and him coming out saying that he wants to be part of a winning team and this team, he doesn't feel like he's going to win anything. Piers Morgan said this, by the way, it's not good for the players. It's really not. If he was to do an interview like this, it should have happened when he wasn't at the club. It should have happened when he wasn't at the club. He's still employed by Manchester United, and people say this is his attempt to try and get himself out of his contract. It may be, but still, as a professional, you don't come out and say that against the manager. He should have, if you wanted to hit the club, he should have come out against the Glazers. He shouldn't have come out against the manager as well as that, because he could have. It just shouldn't have happened halfway through a season. He's his boss at the end of the day, and it's people in the chat say he's bigger than Erik ten Hag. He thinks he is, and in the footballing world he is, but at Manchester United right now he's not. No player is bigger than the club and the manager, and that is a fact, and that's something that all Manchester United fans should go by if they want the club to be successful. It just should happen. We shouldn't ever put a player above the club. We've done that in the past. Fans, and I'm not saying I have, but fans in the past have put players above managers and it ended badly. And then players have never come into fruition for us. When people were trying to put Pogba over Mourinho, how did that go? It didn't end well. It didn't end well. And I'm not saying that Mourinho would have gone on and been an unbelievable manager for Manchester United, the guy that we needed, but we should always stick by the manager, I feel like. Until they prove otherwise, we should stick by the manager over a player, in my personal opinion. And I think everyone should have that view. Not everyone will, unfortunately, but that's if we want the club to be successful, the manager should have full control. Nick P says, somehow this morning I'm more annoyed with that cretin Piers Morgan. He's like a bully trying to stick the knife in. We're in a rebuild this season. Don't need to hear from him. We've stagnated and rubbish. Well, Piers Morgan says that Ronaldo came to him to do that interview. And with Piers Morgan, we'll get into it in a sec, but he doesn't really know much what he's talking about. Let's put it that way. From the stuff he was saying on TalkSport this morning. Honestly, he's very happy that Arsenal are top of the league. He thinks they're going to win the league, and he's bitter over the success I feel like Manchester United have had in the past. And I think he is happy that this is happening. He is happy that this is happening. Of course he is. You can see it kind of when he speaks. But if Ronaldo comes to you as a journalist and doesn't ask you to do an interview, you're going to do it. Let's put it that way. If you're annoyed about the interview, you should be annoyed with Cristiano Ronaldo for doing the interview, because any journalist in his right mind is going to take an interview from Cristiano Ronaldo. Let's put it that way. Avram Heckmat says, good to hear someone speak sense this morning, Beth. Mark last night was so defensive of Ronaldo, and anyone that disagreed with him was pro-Glazer. Everyone has a different opinion, and my opinion is not going to be the same as Mark's. Mark's opinion isn't going to be the same as me. It's not going to be the same as Adam's. It's not going to be the same as Charlie's. It's not going to be the same as you guys. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. Some might be very similar, but I just think if any other player came out and said anywhere near anything like this, it would be a completely different story. And I think even though people are frustrated with Ronaldo, I think he's still not getting the ultimate wrath of what would have happened if it was any other player, because it is Ronaldo. And as I said, it's not just black and white in the fact where you can say, this interview's terrible, he's so disrespectful, get him out of my club right now. It's yes, Ronaldo, you've exposed the Glazers. I'm so happy you're exposing this club, and this interview was great. Or the defensive mode of a lot of Ronaldo fans, which was like, he just wants to be the best. He just wants the club to be the best. And there's no black and white answer to this. It's, for me personally, happy about the stuff he said about the Glazers. I think it needs to be said, and to be said by such a senior figure like Cristiano Ronaldo, it's brilliant for the fans. The stuff he said about Erik ten Hag, Rooney and Rangnick does not sit right with me. It uses disrespect, and he shouldn't play for the football club if he disrespects the manager. Simple as that. And one thing I would say, could you ever imagine the Butcher coming out and doing an interview on Piers Morgan. I know it's different, but at the end of the day, they're all Manchester United players, and it just shouldn't be happening. It just should not be happening. Another day at the circus, everyone. It's Manchester United, and honestly, what I can't wait for is this to be over. I want Cristiano Ronaldo to leave the club just so there's not another headline every week and more drama. The focus should be on the team. It should be on the manager. It should be on winning football games, not about a certain individual. And it just should not be on an individual. This morning we should be going on about how happy we are that we've got a rising talent in Garnacho. That's what we should be talking about. And when Cristiano Ronaldo leaves, I think we will have that situation where we won't have one individual huge ego in the dressing room, and we can start working on this as a team where Erik ten Hag is the boss and the team are together and no one's bigger than anybody else. Moving on. Let's move on to the Piers Morgan stuff, everyone, actually, because I watched it all this morning on TalkSport with Laura Woods. It was a great interview from Laura. I think she's brilliant. And I think there was so much said in this segment that we've not seen online. So I wrote down as many quotes as I could, got some quotes as well off that other people were putting on Twitter, made sure they were accurate, of course. So we've got them to come in now. And Piers Morgan actually did tell a little bit more about what is in this interview and his opinion on stuff that we haven't seen come out already through his Piers Uncensored Twitter and YouTube channel. So we've got a little bit more on this that we'll get into. And honestly, let's just get this started right here so we can actually know what Piers Morgan's viewpoint is on this and what kind of knowledge he has. When I was watching TalkSport, he said that Ronaldo, the game where Cristiano Ronaldo walked off, he said that Manchester United were 2-0 down. No, Piers, we won 2-0. So you've conducted this whole interview and you claim to know everything that's going on at Manchester United. He's not claimed that, but you can insinuate that with the way he's speaking about him at the moment and the way he's speaking about Ronaldo and the opinion he had at the end, which was, we'll get into that. But he also exposed himself to not really knowing anything. Because to say that Manchester United were 2-0 down against Spurs when, in fact, it was the best game we've played in years at Old Trafford, it was a brilliant win, and we completely dominated Spurs and won 2-0. Very different sides of the story there, Piers, because I assume if we were losing, Erik ten Hag would have looked to use Cristiano Ronaldo earlier, not at the 85th minute, whenever he decided to bring him on. Whereas we were actually playing our best game of football we've played in years, hence he didn't want to bring on the substitutes because we were playing so well, is what I can understand. So Piers to not even kind of do his research on that sense, for me, I don't understand how you can't even at least research the scoreline and how you can actually comment on how Manchester United play without Ronaldo when you're clearly not watching it, because that's what aggravates me the most. Piers had a lot to say on the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo should be playing for Manchester United and that he should be playing every game and the fact he wants him at Arsenal. I can guarantee you he's not watched nearly any of Manchester United's football this season. He said himself he doesn't like watching Manchester United. He's not interested, and that he definitely doesn't want to watch Spurs. So he didn't watch that game. How can you make an opinion on it if you've not watched it? And I guarantee you've not really watched Ronaldo this season that much either, because I assume the only game he watched was the Arsenal game from what he was saying. So, and he also thought we were 13 points off top when in fact we're 11 points off top. So did he even know that we won yesterday? Did he even see the Garnacho late winner? And I'm not saying he should be watching Manchester United every minute, but if you're going to do a whole interview on it and then comment on it on TalkSport, I'd expect you to know what you were talking about, personally. So after he'd said that, I couldn't really take any of his opinions very seriously, if I'm being honest with you, because he didn't know. And the one thing I really dislike, hate's a strong word. The one thing I really, really dislike is people comment on stuff when they don't know the full story. That's what I can't stand. So clearly he doesn't really know the full story if he had them opinions on it. So yeah, that's to give you kind of some context about how much Piers Morgan knows. So I wouldn't really take his opinions too seriously, if I'm being honest with you. And Starting off, Piers Morgan says Cristiano Ronaldo has a lot to say about the Glazers that I haven't put out yet. He's not impressed with the MUFC owners at all. We've spoke about this a little bit before. The stuff he's saying about the Glazers is big for us. It's important. And the one thing we would hope when an interview was coming out with Ronaldo, the one thing we could hope for was that he did expose the Glazers. Whether you guys think maybe it's a ploy to keep the fans on side and get some points with the fans, I don't think that. I think Cristiano Ronaldo I do believe him when he says he loves the club. I do. I think he's loves himself more, which is why we've seen the egotistical things come out. But I do think he loves the club. I think he loves his career more than the club, but he loves the club. And I think he will have been completely shell-shocked and dumbfounded at the facilities when he came back. We heard about that last year. We heard the leaks coming out about that last year, that he forced them to kind of make some improvements on the infrastructure and the facilities. But I think it's so important that he came out and made it very clear his thoughts on the Glazers and what they're doing to this football club. And it sounds from that quote, we don't know, we've not seen the full thing yet, that he is going to do that and that he is going to expose them. Which is fans that, and I only say this, I say this to a lot of people, only Manchester United fans will know what the Glazers actually do to this club. And other fans from different clubs have opinions on it, and they only see certain things because they're not Man United fans, they don't see everything. The Glazers have run this club into the ground. We've got a very good manager in Erik ten Hag, which is the only thing I can really applaud them for, if I'm being honest, to go with Erik ten Hag as manager and to back him. That's the one thing they've done right. The money that they've invested into this club and the lack of it in the training, in the facilities, in the stadium, in everything, is not a way you want to run a winning football club. And Ronaldo talks about that as well. Ronaldo talks about that. He said Juventus and Real Madrid have run their club completely differently, and that is why they win. So Glazers fully exposed there in the fact that they don't run a club as if they want to win football games, which I completely agree with. And Piers goes on to say he's not impressed with how they handle the football inside of things. Again, Cristiano Ronaldo bringing up things that we know, but coming from a key figure like him is massive for us. And I don't know if this can do anything to the Glazers, but I think it will definitely make an impact. And if it helps to keep pushing this Glazers out movement, that is a good thing that's come from this interview. And he goes on to say, Piers Morgan, saying that Ronaldo thinks if he was allowed to start as many games as he did last year from the start, he wouldn't be in this position. Instead, he thinks the manager keeps trying to make an example of him, dropped, benched and suspended, and hasn't shown empathy to him. And in that, I would say, what would you expect from a manager if you storm off against Spurs in the best game we've played all season? Of course, you're going to be suspended. I don't know if Piers has worded that in the right way. I assume Ronaldo would know the consequence with that. And I don't think Erik ten Hag is purposely gone into this season. And this is where I think the ego of Ronaldo comes through. Because Ronaldo, it sounds like he thinks, this manager, he knows he'll get headlines if he makes an example of me. He knows it'll distract from the issues at the club if he makes headlines of me. I'm the biggest name in the world. He just wants to make an example out of me. That's the ego, I feel like, of Cristiano Ronaldo shining through. In reality, and it's hard to hear when you believe in yourself as much as Cristiano Ronaldo does, and it is as narcissistic as he is, because I do think to be as good as he is and do this kind of interview and hype himself up this much, you have to have a big ego. We all know Ronaldo has a big ego. I think even Piers said it himself. I think the reality is he didn't come back to pre-season on time. If he has an excuse for that with his daughter, which it seems like he does, then that is completely understandable. And I think Erik ten Hag should have understood that, but especially the stuff going on with his daughter. But the fact that he was pushing for a move already and leaking stories and telling Erik ten Hag that he didn't want to stay at the club. Remember when he had that meeting with Erik ten Hag, the first time he met him, he came and said he didn't want to stay at the club, and ten Hag asked him to stay. Erik ten Hag wouldn't have liked the fact he wants to leave the club. He didn't like the fact he wasn't fit enough to start the first 2 games, which is Erik ten Hag's reasoning as to why he didn't start. And then when he did come into the team, Ronaldo has to kind of understand he hasn't played well. he's not played well enough to hold his position in the team. And I think this is what it comes down to. Honestly, I think Ronaldo can't face the fact he's not as good as he used to be. And I still think there's 100% a player that can do a job for clubs out there. And I still think there's attributes to Ronaldo's game that are brilliant and that even we could utilise if he had the right kind of mentality of wanting to stay at Manchester United and wanting to be part of this and not making everything about himself. I think there's still a player there. But there's not, over the past few months, a player that is warranted to be starting every single game for Manchester United in an Erik ten Hag system. I just don't think he can get his head around the fact he's not a player that Erik ten Hag wants to use in his system week in, week out for 90 minutes a game. But Ronaldo, with how much he rates himself, which he kind of is understandable after everything he's won and the way he's played football throughout his career, he genuinely can come to terms with the fact he's not as good as he used to be. That is honestly what I think of Ronaldo, and he's kind of blaming everything he can apart from his own form, which hasn't been good, if I'm being honest with you. And I think a lot of people know that. If CR7 played every game, this interview wouldn't have happened. Not disagreeing with you on that. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I still think he would have said about the Glazers after he left the club. I think he's been very. There's been leaks coming out that he's not happy with him for quite a long time, and people saying he's on 500k a week, he shouldn't be going against someone who's paying him 500k a week. With what he's on, I don't think that money matters to him. More fools us to paying that, if I'm being honest with you. Paying over 500k a week is ridiculous. I mean, when he came back to the club, you understand why he'd be on that, because he was one of the best players in the world. But at the moment, his performances aren't warranting over 500k a week. But at the end of the day, you can still criticise the owners of this club, and I think he's right to do that. When it comes down to Erik ten Hag and the criticism of Erik ten Hag, personally for me, I don't think he would have criticised him if Ronaldo would have come in and he would have put him at the forefront of his plans and played him every game. And I think ultimately, because he's not playing well and because the manager isn't playing him, the blame's directed at the manager, because he can't accept that he's not good. He's not playing well. He can't accept that he's not as good as he used to be. That is my personal opinion. But he also won't like the fact that a manager, he feels like, doesn't respect how good he feels like he is. He won't like that. But Erik ten Hag is judging Manchester United, and Erik ten Hag's judging Ronaldo now, not on Ronaldo of even last year, or not even on Ronaldo of a few years ago. He's judging him as of now, and as of now, he's not playing well. And Piers goes on to say that jaws will be dropped when I asked where he might go and where he will see himself going after Manchester United. That to me feels like jaws will be dropped where he might go. I honestly can't wait to see his answer, because what team would it have to be for your guys' jaws to drop on this? For me, it'd have to be like a Chelsea or a Manchester City, or obviously he's not going to go to Manchester City. He's not going to go there. But he could definitely see him going to Chelsea. And I think that could be a jaw-dropping move. I see it coming, but a lot of fans won't be happy with the fact he's going to Chelsea, who's in the Premier League. And I think Todd Bowley will want a star like Cristiano Ronaldo, that in American terms, a superstar that's going to bring in shirts, that's going to bring in the glamour. And I feel like Chelsea could definitely do that. And my jaw wouldn't drop if he said he would potentially go back to Sporting, or he said he'd go to Italy. That wouldn't be jaw dropping for me. So for it to be jaw dropping, I think it's got to be either someone in the Premier League. I mean, people are saying Arsenal. Piers would love that. Honestly, Piers would love that, but Arteta would never. Chelsea would disgust me. Dragging Erik ten Hag in that interview is a bit strange. Who cares if Ronaldo is bigger than the club? He can leave. We've got to focus on the future. That is the comment of the day. Ronaldo might be bigger than Erik ten Hag, but in Manchester United fans' eyes, the manager should be bigger than any player. And if he thinks he's bigger than the club, he should leave. Karen Mehta says, we have been running to the ground by these greedy Glazers, and I'm glad someone has shown the temerity to call a spade a spade. Yeah, I'm glad that's happened. I'm glad he's called the Glazers out. But that is contradicted by my disappointment that he's said what he said about Eric Ten Hag. Oscar Rowland Clark says Newcastle. Honestly, imagine if you went Newcastle. Imagine if you went Newcastle. That'd be I think that'd be a great move, really. But I wouldn't want it to happen. But I think it'd be a great move, if I'm being honest with you. Some would say Callum Wilson still starts ahead of him. But yeah, I at the moment, definitely. Anyway, we move on. Piers says, Ronaldo wants to be in a competitive team in the Champions League. He doesn't feel that is what Manchester United are. Nothing to do with money. He just wants to keep winning, and he doesn't feel Manchester United can do that, keep winning. And that, again, I like the call out on the Glazers in the fact that with the Glazers in charge, this club isn't going to be consistently in the Champions League and isn't consistently going to be winning. But to kind of the team, every teammate in Manchester United's dressing room is going to be watching this interview. And for him to say that he doesn't think United are going to keep winning, I think just kind of, it puts the team down, in my opinion. A team down that are playing very well at the moment and are doing everything they can to try and win every single game. And this is why it annoys me. If the team had the attitude of the team last year, I'd understand. Because the attitude of the team last year absolutely was way off it. And it was almost disrespectful to the fans. But we've seen such a change in attitude. We've seen the togetherness. We've seen the passion. And as a player, if I'm reading that, I'm like, he doesn't think we can win. That would aggravate me. It would really, really aggravate me. Sean James says this is a disgrace to Man United fans and a manager who's trying everything to put us back where we belong. I agree what he says about the board, but we are fans of the club and this is disrespectful. Yeah. Ronaldo, at the end of the day, Eric Ten Hag is only trying to win with Manchester United. He's doing everything he can to make Manchester United win again. And the club are backing that. The Glazers aren't doing everything they can to make Manchester United win again. Absolutely. But Eric Ten Hag is. And to have this come out about him, I don't like it. Darren Mulaney, Celtic would be ideal for Ronaldo. I don't think that'd happen. Funnily enough, I just don't think that'd happen. We're not entertaining silly places like that because not as that Celtic silly, but he just wouldn't go there. And he says, Piers Morgan, he goes on to say, he wants to retire around 14. He's got 2.5 years left. He needs to be somewhere where he continues to win. And then he goes on to say, he doesn't feel respected and valued under Ten Hag. He doesn't feel that this manager respects him. He feels that from the very start, he's gone out of his way to score points against Ronaldo. And he thinks it's very easy for managers to do this because he's the biggest name in football and it can distract from real problems at the club. Charlie Nutt says it perfectly. This is why Ten Hag wanted to stop this crap. And this is why this interview is exactly why Ten Hag doesn't want Ronaldo at the club, by the way. Because these are the things that can happen when a figure like Ronaldo is at the club. And then AB15, Ronaldo's 100% right. Man United's been crap for so long. He's right in the fact that the board has made it harder for Manchester United to win because of the lack of investment. 100%. He's right on that fact. But he's not right in the sense that this team can't win stuff. I feel like Eric Ten Hag is doing everything he can to make that happen. Or he could have been clarified saying the club can't win stuff under the Glazers. That would have hit hard. Maybe we'll see that in the full interview. We'll have to see. So for me, again, that quote about doesn't feel valued under Ten Hag, doesn't feel the manager respects him, he's gone to score points against Ronaldo. It's easy for managers to do that because it distracts from the real problems at the club. I think, again, it's very self-centered, that quote. And to think that a manager who's completely got an agenda against you and he's just trying to score points against you, I think, again, it's blame when in fact you've just not been good enough. Eric Ten Hag wouldn't have come into this club with a massive agenda against Cristiano Ronaldo. He would come in wanting to do everything he can to win football games. He doesn't think Ronaldo can be clearly doesn't think Ronaldo is the best option for that. That's what it is at the end of the day. That's what it is. He doesn't think in footballing terms, Ronaldo at the moment on the pitch is the best chance of Ronaldo of Manchester United winning that game. That's what it is. I think it's Ronaldo's ego again coming out to think he's just trying to score points against me. He's just trying to make an example out of me because he can't face the fact that the real reason is because he thinks in footballing terms he's not quite good enough at the moment. But at the same time, I can understand Ronaldo's feelings about he won't want to be dropped. after everything he's done in his career. He won't want to be. I can understand that, but there's ways to go about things. And obviously the Spurs thing, there's absolutely no excuse for what happened in that game. Piers then goes on to said that Man United are 5th in the league, 11 points off. Well, he said 13 points off top, but he got that wrong as well. We're actually 11 points off top. Playoffs for the Europa League, where they will probably get beat by Barcelona. So Ronaldo is right that the club's gone backwards. And Piers, if you knew anything about the club, you'd know that we're playing better football than we have in multiple years. You can see that Erik ten Hag's on the right path to making this team better. You can see vast improvements, but you would also know that when a manager comes into a massive rebuild, it's not gonna. We're not. Who in the right mind would think Erik ten Hag should come into Manchester United and should be challenging for the league straight away? If you haven't forgotten, Piers, Arteta's been at Arsenal for 3 years now, and he's only just started to compete. Only just. They missed out on Champions League football last year. I think they were 8th the year before that. He's only just started to compete, and it's took him 3 years. And yes, they're playing good football now, and they're competing for the league title. Arteta's done a great job now, but let's see where Erik ten Hag is in 3 years, because it takes time. It takes time. And I think, yes, the club has gone backwards in terms of infrastructure, in terms of winning, absolutely, and that is the fault of the Glazers. 100% is that fault of the Glazers. But to try and insinuate that 5th in the league, 11 points off top, and in place of the Europas because of the manager for me couldn't have done much more this season from what we were at the back end of last season. And the manager has to have credit for turning it around as quick as he has, I genuinely think, and getting players in. Because he chose all them players in the summer window. Do not get it twisted. He chose every single transfer. And it's the one transfer window that's actually come off very well. And it seems like every player is working out well. Erik ten Hag's done more than what you would expect a manager to do in his first few months. I think he's come in and he's done a brilliant job, and he's handled the Ronaldo situation brilliantly. The reason why we are where we are is because of the Glazers. And the reason Erik ten Hag's got to start at this starting point is because of the Glazers. Honestly, it's not Erik ten Hag's fault at all. He's doing his best he can. And I think he's going to do a very good job if he's allowed to by the board and if they're given the investment. Darren Mulaney says Ronaldo should have been on tour before the start of the season if he wanted to play regular. He should have been, but the news about his daughter kind of explains that situation, and it's completely understandable in my opinion. If his daughter was ill, which she was, it's understandable. And then he also goes on to say, Darren Mulaney, Ronaldo should have, oh no, he sent it twice by accident. Unlucky. You spent an extra £4 for no reason. Beth, compared to when Ronaldo left the club, he is right. That's what Ronaldo is referring to. Of course, the team is doing better now, but when he left the club, the club has gone backwards. Yeah, absolutely. The Glazers have run the club into the ground, 100%. It's gone massively backwards, and Ronaldo is right for saying that. But I'm talking about Piers now. Piers insinuating that we should be doing better at this moment in time. We shouldn't be in the situation that we're in, personally. Sean James says, it's a disgrace to Man U fans and a manager who's trying everything to put us back where we belong. I agree what he says about the board, but as these fans of the club, it is disrespectful. Yeah, I agree with what he says about the board, and that's one thing I think we can all agree on. That is the good thing to come out of this interview. And then he goes on to say, Piers, that Ronaldo massively criticises the Glazers and the lack of investment on the footballing side. Big plus, and that's where Ronaldo gets a win, in my opinion. Criticising the Glazers and lacking investment, it needs to happen. It needs to happen by a key figure at Manchester United. And again, which is quite sad, actually, he says Ronaldo had to go home to his son after the Spurs game, after the first game he's ever been suspended in his career. Emotions got the better of him, and he felt like he was being completely disrespected and not valued. But he has to explain to his son the situation about him storming off and the fact he was suspended. That must have been tough for Ronaldo, I've got to say, because he would have been disappointed in himself that he got suspended and that he let the emotions get the better of him in that sense. I would have thought he would have been disappointed. And that would have been a tough conversation to have, but at the same time, that can never happen. No one can do that. And I think Ronaldo would have understood that he can't storm off and get away with it. I think he would have understood that. I just think as well, realistically, he would have. The thing with Ronaldo is, I think he understands that storming off was wrong, but I generally think Piers says he knows that this interview is going to get backlash. He knows he's going to get people talking. He knows he's going to get slated for this interview. He knows this, but he wants to get the truth out there. I think Ronaldo, he'll know that walking off at Spurs was the wrong thing to do, but he'll think coming out and with this interview, he'll think it's best to get the truth out there from his own personal perspective than to let opinions keep going without his side being out there. He'll want his side of the story out. He seems like a very fiery figure that wants people to know his side of the story. He wants people to know his side. And I think I can understand that as a person, is you always want your side to be heard. But as a professional, he just shouldn't have gone for Erik ten Hag. Going for the board, yes. Explaining his reasons for wanting to leave after he's left the football club, I get it. Midway through the season, going for the manager and also going for Wayne Rooney, it's just that's the part that shouldn't have happened, in my opinion. So I can sit here now and say some parts of the interview I agreed with, some parts I didn't. Do I think he should play for the club again after what he said about the manager? No. Do I think there could have been a way back if he only spoke about the Glazers? Yes. The fact he threw the manager under the bus, the fact the club didn't know this interview was coming out, the fact the manager didn't know this interview was coming out, the fact the players didn't know this interview was coming out, the timing, the lack of knowledge to the manager and the teammates, and the disrespect towards the manager is what was wrong in this interview. Calling out the Glazers, calling out the board, explaining why you want to leave, I can understand it. And then lastly, to wrap it up, Piers moves on to say he wants him at Arsenal and he thinks he would be perfect for a player to play alongside Jesus. And then my personal opinion, I wrote down next to this, manager suicide. Arteta only just got rid of problems like this when he got rid of Aubameyang and Ozil. And I think that's worked out brilliant for them. Arsenal are doing so well because Mikel Arteta is the boss and they've got a harmonious dressing room. I don't think that would have happened with Aubameyang there. AB15 says Ronaldo 100% right. United have been bad for a long time. I think I've already read that one out. But anyway, that's everything on the show, guys. I've gone a little bit over there. So only supposed to be around 45 minutes, from 47. But there's a lot to talk about. And to be honest with you, I see people in the chat constantly saying, Beth, such a Ronaldo hater, or people in the chat saying everything he's done, he's out of order. He shouldn't be playing for this club anymore. Get rid of him. The stance is he's a very fiery character that I think does love the club, but he loves himself more. I'm so happy he called out the Glazers, and I'm happy he said what he said about the club being run into the ground and them not carrying on the football inside of it. So happy about that. Just can't look past the disrespect towards a manager that we feel like is doing such a good job and is actually a manager who's finally starting to improve this club and bringing the right type of players in with the right mentality in the likes of Martinez, Anthony, Eriksen, Casemiro. Also, the digs about Wayne Rooney and Rangnick. Just distasteful. You could have kind of maybe got the Rangnick stuff you could have kind of got over, but bringing Erik ten Hag into it, bringing Wayne Rooney into it, it just was disrespectful, and he can't play for a manager that he doesn't respect at the end of the day. And I think Ronaldo knows that. I think that's why he went for it, and I think that's why he said what he said about Erik ten Hag. He knows the club cannot let him play under a manager that he doesn't respect and that he's called out in this way. He wants out of his contract. I think he's going to get it. I think we're going to have to pay him out of his contract and let this go. It cannot linger into January. I think the game's over New Year. Erik ten Hag will just be constantly asked about Ronaldo because clearly he won't be in the squad after what he said if he is still there. And I think it'll just go completely toxic if we don't get rid now. Either find a way to get him out of his contract or end the contract. That's what we need to do. A lot of people in the chat saying a lot of people have said we should put him in the under 21s and wait till the end of the season. It's just toxicity for no reason. And two wrongs don't make a right in this. And I think get rid is the best situation that can happen right now. It's sad that it's had to end like this. I idolised Ronaldo as I was growing up. A lot of you guys would have done. And for me, he was a club legend. And it's just sad, really, that it's ended like this. But it is what it is. And we've got to take it. And everyone, make sure you tune into the interview as well that comes out on Wednesday night. Of course, we'll be dissecting it all and going through it on the United Stand. We'll have reaction coming out of that, coming from that interview as soon as it drops. And full context is going to be crucial in this interview as well. So we'll get that on Wednesday night on Talk TV. But thank you everyone for watching. And he's still a club legend for what he did at the club. You'll never be able to take that away from him. He was brilliant for Manchester United, and he's been such a great player to watch growing up. I don't think this interview takes that away from him. I don't. But also, you've got to call out the fact that going against your manager in that way is just, you just can't go back from that now in this terms. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you get your comments in. What do you think about the Ronaldo quotes? Do you think he should leave? Do you think you understand where Ronaldo's coming from? Do you have the same opinion as me, where you're happy he came out against the Glazers, but sad he came out against Erik ten Hag? Get your comments in down below, and I'll see you on the next one, everybody. Oh, and we've got Ben Foster and Goldbridge coming up soon as well, very soon. So we'll get Ben Foster's opinion on everything. It's going to be good, the content that we've got coming out. So make sure you stay tuned, guys. And remember, big announcements coming this week. Keep tuned. Bye.